broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are available in podcast form. You can find them at ArtistFirst.com. We welcome your email questions and comments to dj@artistfirst.com. And now here they are. They're quite famous. Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Yes, and Margaret is famous in many states.
Wait a minute.
And I am infamous in many states, and I'm Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
And she's Margaret, and welcome to the Soul of the Everyman, where your fame is assured, or our fame is assured, or perhaps our infamy is assured.
Yes.
And tonight's show, if you haven't guessed already, is about fame, but it's not really about fame particularly. It's about sort of our very human basic need for appreciation, to be sort of feted and have the admiration acknowledged, be acknowledged and have the admiration of our peers. And, fame is sort of a good catch-all word for it. It is sort of the food of the ego, or of the I. The I want to be famous. The ego wants to be famous. It wants to be loved. It wants to be feted. And we all kind of feel, you always feel good when you're being appreciated. You want to do something. There was that wonderful saying from the Bible, which is, if you're going to give alms, do it such that your left hand doesn't know what your right hand is doing, which is a wonderfully biblical way of, that image of not even letting your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And the second part of that is, and your Father in heaven, your God who sees everything, will know that you're doing good, that you don't need the appreciation of the crowd. You don't need no one else needs to know except you and the all-seeing God. And you'll be storing up treasures, for heaven, for later. And that's all, it's lovely biblical terms, but really what it's saying is that fame, which is kind of, you do something and you want to be instantly feted and adored and have everyone talking about you and telling you how good you are and how wonderful you are, is a fleeting thing. And it's sort of, it is ego food, but it's also junk food. It's vapor. You're famous one day, what's that saying that from that show we watch where, one day you're in and the next day you're out, it's a good catchphrase for how fame is. One day you're famous, and the next day they're like, who? And because that ego food, that I food, that sort of snack food of the soul, all it does is make your ego fat, and it doesn't satisfy.
Well, yeah, it's something that isn't really nourishing your body, your core, your whole body. Fame, if you look at it in terms of the chakra system, that has to do with the third chakra, which has to do with power. And it's power on the world level. So it has a tendency to, the way the relationship is defined is power over or power under. Someone is receiving and someone is giving. So in fame, what you're looking for is the attention, to be given the attention. And it's understanding that it is a form of relationship. Very basic, actually, if you think about it. I mean, even animals want attention. They come at you and, pet me, feed me.
Yeah.
But to understand that as a human, that's only one aspect of the kind of relationship you are capable of. And it is only feeding that worldly body form. But because you're a human, there is a hunger for more in a relationship than just a like.
Yes. I mean, and just to go back to fame for a minute, there's all these corona effects of fame. You mentioned relationships, and I think that's really the theme that we kind of jumped forward to fame, but what we're really talking about here is the fact that people use this kind of seeking of attention and seeking of adulation and fame as a sort of a substitute for relationships, and sometimes even a substitute for a genuineness of soul and personality of their own. Fame also builds a persona, but that's another topic. So this idea of seeking adulation does fulfill sort of a very basic low chakra need, the third chakra need, which is that you want to be powerful and you want to be considered.
Yeah, attention. You want the attention. Powerful.
Well, but you want people to pay attention, to listen to you. There's a certain deference that comes from one of the reasons people seek this sort of universal acclaim is it feels good, but it also gives you sort of you mentioned likes, and these days with social media, you have these quote unquote influencers, which is a lovely word. They take in essence an adverb and make it into a noun. So you're an influencer. But what these people are trying to do is, in essence, gather enough of these ephemeral things called likes, such that now they have so many likes that they can trade them in for influence. You say, well, all my followers, which is the word that they use, are going to want to know what I had for breakfast or whatever, what shoe or thing I'm wearing, and I become an influencer. And that substitute for relationship. This is no longer a relationship. It's almost like the opposite of a relationship. It's a persona talking to the faceless masses, who are then kind of supposedly letting their desires be guided and shaped by the influencer. When you couch it in those terms, it sounds very, very Machiavellian, or sort of Bond villain Bond super villainy. It's not only not a great relationship. It's a very sort of odd and almost bizarre thing that you really can't term a relationship, but I think people conflate it into a relationship.
Well, it comes back to that yearning. People want to be admired. They want to be given deference in that. I'll listen to you because you have a better judgment on it, or a better in on it. You have more. Your voice will have more weight, so they'll listen to you. But if you go back into your internal and ask why is it necessary that I need to have this influence? Why do I have to have people listen to me for me to feel good? Because people who crave that, it's like satiating a
lack,
filling a hole. And it only lasts for a short period of time. It's not a permanent fill. It's not fulfillment. You got sieve. I have a sieve on the bottom of your cup, and it slowly drains through.
Or water into sand.
So if you ask yourself that question, why is it necessary for me to have this, to be acknowledged this way, and touch into that craving that you want to fill this hole. And ask yourself, what is this hole that you're trying to fill? Because you have the sensation or the yearning inside of you. Where is it coming from, and what am I missing? Because I think that's also part of the unspoken feel, is that it feels as if you're missing something.
Well, that's a great point. And there's actually two great points. So we'll have to go back to the previous one. But that point particularly, just to lay it on the table, is there's a certain degree of introspection that you're avoiding through fame. In much the same way that people use drugs or alcohol or other things, fame is an aphrodisiac. It's a drug, and it kind of blunts this idea that you're lacking something. But the previous point, I just want to, before we go too far past, I'm going to put that on the table too, is there's a relationship on both sides. The people who provide this kind of adulation to the influencer or whoever this person is who's getting fame, they also feel like they have a relationship. And the case in point is when something happens to this person who you don't know and never will know and never wants to see you, and you are just one of the faceless masses who hit the like button all the time, you feel like, oh, it's so terrible. They say, I'm broken up. And they start, they feel as though there's a one-sided relationship where they're giving, but they're not getting, but there's a fantasy relationship here too on that side. But I like the second point better, in the sense that the introspection which is being avoided, what you just said is kryptonite to fame, because you have to sit there and go, why am I really doing this? And I think if you answer that question, you find that what you were doing and what you were getting wasn't what you wanted.
Well, usually you do a generalized judgment that, well, if I do this, then I'll have that, or I'll be fine, or I'll be satisfied. And when you actually go through the experience, you need to evaluate, well, what actually has happened here? Was it what I thought it was going to be? Did I have were my expectations met? Or what actually happened?
I think the first question is the first one is the interesting one. The second one's interesting too, but the first one is, I think the unspoken question is, I feel a lack, and what will I do? Oh, I can do these things which people will like me. I'll put a crazy video up on some social media site of me doing something like jumping off a roof repeatedly into the ground and my face, whatever. These videos exist, or whatever they are, and then suddenly it goes viral and gets 10 billion likes, and now you're suddenly, you feel like all this wonderful, what you think is like wonderful love coming at you from all these people you don't know, and every one of those 10 billion hits is a dopamine hit. It's like gambling. It's like anything. This kind of a like. They've even done studies. I think Dr. Bump, whom we have to have on again soon, was talking about the fact that these likes are like little dopamine hits, and they become addictive. And the basic question which they're trying to blunt is, I feel a lack, so let me do this and see if that fills it. So it's very much a seeking and a failing kind of thing, because I think you get to the point where you say, well, I've done all these things, and yet, the lack is still there.
Yeah, I think it takes courage to be able to stop yourself and look at it.
Oh, tremendous courage.
You look at the experience and go, well, that didn't work. I'm still aching here. So what am I looking for exactly? And to be able to separate yourself, your identity, from what the sensation is. Because the problem, I think, happens where you're feeling as if you're part of you is void, is missing. And if you identify or have placed your identity in this idea of what this feeling is, then you're sitting there going, oh no, part of me is a void. No, I can't have this nothingness as my identity. And you need to be able to separate it out and say, well, no, that's the sensation or the feeling, but I am different from that. I perceive it, but that's not who I am.
Right.
And that takes more groundedness to be able to pull away from that, because it's the feel or the emotion is almost like this vortex that sucks you in. So that you stand in the middle of it and you believe you're the vortex.
Well, and the point, I think, I'll say it again in different ways, that you're identifying with the opinion of others, or you're identifying with the lack of some other external approval, appreciation, whatever it is. The lack of that is me. It's a judgment on me. I am not worthy. I am void. I am not. I'm not loved. And therefore, I have to.
Almost canceled.
I'm canceled, to use the current phrase. And in fact, we're going to have a show on that. We may do it yet. We canceled that show. But I think if you go back, initially we all have this feeling that we want to be loved, and we seek it. We seek the adulation. If you move into a space where you feel that is not being filled, you look for things to fill it, and there are many things that people do. One of these things is this idea of acquiring fame and influence, because I think among the things which we do as human beings to fill the void, this one is very socially acceptable. People tell you, go out, make your fortune, become world famous, and you'll be happy. And these things are said in a breath. They're made almost as a tautology, that happiness comes after you become rich and famous. And if you buy into that and you already have a lack, you say, well, this is how I fill the lack. I go and I put as many posts on your social media of choice until everyone in the world knows my name, and then I'll be happy. And I don't think the introspection or the advice is ever challenged until you get to this kind of dark night of the soul. Like, I've done it all. I have everything they said would make me happy, and they are gone, and the happiness is not here, and it's just me left with me. Mm-hmm. And then you have to come to something. You have to say you've reached the end of. We've talked about this in other shows. You've reached the end of self, and there's more. And you have to go beyond self. You have to go outside of self. And the ego gets scared at that, because the ego's like, no, there's nothing out there. We're gonna die.
Well, it has no mooring.
Yeah.
It's afloat at that point, because it feels that it knows, well, this is the ground that we're standing on, and I've defined the world according to me. Right. So this is what where we're supposed to live, and I can handle this. But it's like, but you're more than this.
Right. The ego tells you that if you step outside the box that it's created, that you're going to die, and never acknowledging or never wanting to acknowledge that there is so much more, because the ego is a very small part of you, but it wants to tell you, and it will over and over again, that it is all.
Yes, that's what it does. But again, it's being able to ground and separate out in terms of perception, to know what is speaking, what part of you is feeling this way, and to acknowledge the quiet parts of you. I don't think people stand still enough to take into account, quieter parts of your existence, your being, they're vast.
Hmm.
And they wait.
It's very true. They're very patient.
They have all eternity.
And now, we always, almost every time we get around to this, this is, much of this is at the core of Tolle's philosophies. And what he's talking about there is the ego, or the mind, constantly spun by the world and constantly spinning in the world. And I'm sure that fame, seeking fame and seeking the adulation of others, and that whole spin of ego is yet another of his many things that keep us in this mindset, this never in the now, but always in the what can I do, what can I do, what can I do, what if they don't like me, what if they like me, this constant spin of either worry about what happened in the past, that they didn't like me and I have to do something to be liked more, or I'll never be happy, or worrying about, I'll never be happy unless I get more likes and more fame and more adulation. And it's all ego stuff. And that the idea of just going outside of that and into the quiet stillness and the being state, and you realize that none of that fulfills, and that the existence alone is fulfillment enough. But yet the ego says, no.
Not according to what I know.
No, not according to what I know. We're scheduled to do an influencer thing in 10 seconds.
Right. Well, organized, and we've got to move along.
Yeah.
We're walking over here. Now we're going to look at this.
And so then the being state, the introspection state, or the state of just existing, even beyond introspection, which is just, I'm just there, needs none of that. And we started with, the fact that fame blunts the lack, and fame takes the place of relationships. But I think the idea of seeking fame or desiring fame also takes us way away from the now and into the endless cycle of, future past, future past, future past, future past. Talk to yourself, talk to yourself, talk to yourself, talk to yourself.
Well, you're sitting there going, well, now's not enough. It's not enough right now. So I got to look forward to something.
Right.
It's not enough now. And you're sitting there going, well, what's not enough?
Right.
What is it that is driving you at this point? Can you answer that question?
Yeah, exactly. And that's another good point. We've often talked about Campbell and about follow your bliss, and some would argue and say, well, following your bliss is the same thing as what you're saying. You're seeking fame. And I think Campbell would push back, if I have read him correctly, and say what you're trying to get by following your bliss is not all the things that come with it. He says you'll follow your bliss and fame will come and fortune will come and people will come as they came to him. He was world famous by the time he passed away. But he said your motivation is your bliss. You're doing it because you love it and it gives you joy. And if you're doing whatever you're doing, if you're doing it out of the fulfillment of joy, you're getting everything that you're giving and more. You're filling all those places in you that are lacking, because the pursuit of any a pursuit of anything, whether it's a relationship or a life's work that gives back joy, means that the energy that you're putting into it is coming right back to you 100-fold. The energy you put into your relationship, if it's a true relationship, comes back to you 100-fold. And you live in that cycle of energy interchange. Tolle might say, well, that's still not the now. And so we'd say, Tolle, shut up, we're having fun. but the pursuit of anything if it brings you joy, if it is quote unquote your purpose, you can certainly find it to be fulfilling. You know, I think that where you end up with the pursuit being empty is that you're not doing it because it gives you joy. You're doing it because you say, in the future, I'll be happy. And that's a completely different thing, because that you're saying is basically everything you're doing and whatever you get from it is not the goal. It is just getting me to the future, some nebulous thing that I'm going to be happy.
Mhm. Yeah, it's really not living in the now.
Right.
But what you're saying to yourself is you're forming this plan in your head in order to get what you're craving. So it's your mental part sitting there going, okay, now we make a plan.
That's what the mental says. What is now for? Now is for making plans.
Yes, yes. Now, where is my pencil and paper? I'm going to list everything, and little check boxes next to it, so that make sure it's an organized plan.
The wisdom of Pinky and the brain.
And this is how we see the world.
Right. Well, no, isn't that how some people couch it, Margaret?
Yes. Well, this is and what they're trying to say is to take over their own world because they're unhappy in the world they happen to be in now.
But that's the kind of thing the argument back to Campbell is, well, you're doing the same thing I'm doing, and his argument back to them is, I'm enjoying it more than you are, or I'm enjoying the process. You know, the Buddhist term of, you know, it's not the goal, it's not the destination, it's the journey, right? You have to enjoy the journey. You have to enjoy every moment of now in your pursuit. And then you realize that the pursuit doesn't matter. The destination no longer matters. If the journey, or if every moment of the journey brings you joy, you're there already. You've never left. You never had to get anywhere. You just have to pursue, Campbell would say, pursue your bliss, or live in the now.
Well, that's what I was about to say, is it's living in the now, as Tolle and a lot of the Buddhists have placed it, is it doesn't really matter if you're enjoying it or not. It is now, as it is, and begin to touch into that which is beyond your evaluations and your lists, and enter into a different state that doesn't engage the turmoil that is surrounding you.
Right, all life is suffering thing.
Yes, all life is suffering when you are in that mode.
But I would say that joy is the word I use expressly, because you chided me about it last time, or so many times ago, because joy is the eternal versus happiness. Yes. Happiness is the ego thing.
Yes. Yes, it is. And joy is something that is.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Joy bees. Joy is a being state. Joy is a being. I know I'm just being stupid. But that's what I do. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to be stupid, and I'm enjoying. I'm enjoying it too. And I'll take this stupid moment. We're going to go back to the studio and have a wonderful, joyful break, and I'll be stupid on the other side.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, the Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Brag Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir. There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Taking God on Patrol is a first-person account of the world of law enforcement from the perspective of a Christian police officer in the 4th largest city in America. From speeding car chases to the crossing of the thin blue line, author Mark S. Cariner seeks to find God's biblical truth in a behind-the-scenes look at law enforcement. And check out Mark's newest book, The Tactical Heart. Both are available at Amazon.com.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief Dev is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lynes is Book 1 of the adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
Thanks for joining us on The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Let's get back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lynes.
Thank you very much, D-Man. That was 10 by 10. And, tonight we're talking about fame. And the way we ended the last half hour really kind of sums it up, is that, in essence, you can become... We should probably preface this by saying that fame in and of itself is not a bad thing, nor is being not famous. Neither one of them is a good or bad thing. So you can, in the course of following whatever your path is, you may become famous, you may become wealthy, you may become, all the things that the world says are important. But if none of them matter to you, or rather, they were never the goal, it was the journey, and it was following your bliss and enjoying every moment of now, then let them come, because they'll come and they'll go. You'll be famous one day, you'll be in one day, and you'll be out the next. And if it doesn't matter, in other words, it makes no difference on your internal joy, your internal state of fulfillment, then let them come, let them go. It doesn't matter. And that's not only perfectly acceptable, it's incredibly healthy. The opposite is less healthy. And I wanted to segue, if you wouldn't mind, if you have it in front of you, and if you don't, I'll give you a moment, to read our really boss graphic that we always put up sometime after now. But we're going to read from the really boss graphic that'll be up on the website at some point. Go ahead, Ma.
Okay. Talent is God-given. Be humble. Fame is man-given. Be grateful. Conceit is self-given. Be careful.
Exactly. And that last one, conceit, we haven't really talked about it, but except in the beginning, we said when you do seek adulation, the temptation, and this goes back to the ceremony that they would give to Roman generals, where they would bring them through the streets. It would be a conquering general. They'd bring them through the streets of Rome, and everyone in the crowd would be screaming their name. They'd be throwing laurel wreaths at them and all that stuff. And they would have one person who was designated to sit beside or near the person who was being acclaimed and just say to her, basically, hey, remember, you're immortal. You're not a god. This is not going to last. Keep grounded. In other words, stay grounded. The idea that fame can become conceit, can become addictive, and you can start to believe your own press, as the saying goes. Oh, they love me. They love me. I must be lovable. Well, that idea, the side effect, one of the toxic side effects, because we're really talking about toxicity here, of fame, is conceit and arrogance.
Just as an aside, didn't that man who was doing the whispering to the celebrated general, was there a name for that person?
Probably, because it was Romans. They named everything.
They name everything.
There was a name,
like a title or something. You're
right.
We'll look that up.
Fame whisperer or something like that.
Well,
no, I'm sure you're right. I just can't remember what it was.
Yeah, no.
Studio audience, anybody? No. If you named that, we would have there would have been a Chevy Camaro, keys to a Chevy Camaro under your seat. No, that's Oprah. Oprah unfortunately has bit very deeply into the fame bug, but as do many of these celebrities. They in an American culture. I won't personalize this. Oprah's just fine. In American culture, we love to fet people, and we see the effects of it. They become arrogant. They become conceited. They become sort of bigger than themselves, and they allow this open pit of neediness to become this roaring fire of conceit and arrogance.
Yeah, it would be interesting to have a position in government with that title. You would be the one designated to whisper to anyone who's beginning to mouth off about how great they are. Right. And they're writing books about how wonderful they are. Okay. And this person come over and say, okay, I'm going to be with you for this period of time. Let's see, you wrote a book, so I get to whisper in your ear for the next week.
Right. You're not that great.
Right. If you had no, now you're human and you've made plenty of mistakes.
Right. Simpsons did it. That's what that you say that over and over again. Simpsons did it better.
I think that would be hysterically funny. For me, but it will keep people grounded.
Well, it would be a wonderful thing to have something, and I think we were talking a little bit about toxicity. I think a grounded person is a person who has internalized that voice, who realizes that the current moment of adulation and fame is fleeting, and that it shouldn't be preserved. You know what? In the moment of fame, enjoy it. Enjoy your triumphs. Enjoy winning the Super Bowl, whatever it is. There you are. You're on the pinnacle. But realize that the pinnacle is a pinnacle because it is singular. It takes you a long time to get to the top. You're there for an instant, and then you're on your way back down. You're like, what happened? Hey, I wanted to be. You can't stay on top, or the top becomes the ground.
Well, it's just the Romans would have something like that because they were exceedingly practical.
Well, yes, and there are practical reasons for not letting people get too arrogant, but the idea of peaks and valleys in life. This is a digression, but the reason the peaks are peaks is that they are singular and short, and the reason that the valleys are valleys is again they are singular and short. It is important to realize that wherever you are, whether it's currently a peak of incredible fame or a valley of incredible despair, that neither one lasts. Infamy. Neither one lasts forever, and the joy of now is that now doesn't last forever. The joy of now is that you enjoy it now, or you endure it now, and you get to the next now, and the next now is different. And that idea of whispering in your ear, remember that you're mortal, remember that this is ephemeral. Mortals are ephemeral. It is fleeting. Enjoy it, but don't live here, because here is not where people live. Here is trying to live on the pinnacle of fame is a pit of endless disappointment. You can't do it. Nobody can do it.
Right.
If you enjoy every moment, you enjoy when I was super famous, and you enjoy when you're super anonymous, because it doesn't matter. You're you, and you enjoy just being you.
I think that just the acknowledgement that you, in living your life, people aren't going to do what you want them to do. Right? Just
damn those people. Why would they do what I want them to do? Sorry, go ahead.
It's like this cry of every mother with small children. Why don't they do what I tell them?
Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry. God darn people. Go ahead.
All right, Lord.
So, moving on. People will do what you want them to do.
Well, the acknowledgement that you cannot control everything.
Or anything, really.
Okay. Would you like to take over the...
No, please. I'm agreeing with you.
And because you're not that powerful, that every word that you speak suddenly snaps into existence. To acknowledge that. And it's okay. And you have a comfortable place somewhere. You don't have to be this almighty being to be able to be comfortable with yourself. And if it feels as if you must be this almighty being, then you better find out where the discomfort is. Because that means you've been sitting on it, and sitting on it, and sitting on it, and it's been trying to knock on your solid rock head to get you to recognize that you need to pay attention to this. Maybe that's what it is. All this attention seeking is because there's a part of you that's trying to get your attention.
That's a very good point.
So you're just going out there saying, oh, well, I need attention. It's like, no, you need to give you attention.
Yes. This is a very wise point. Almost all attention-seeking behavior, as you said, it's for a deficit. And it's because you're ignoring or you're not paying attention to a part of you, which is your being part, or your part that needs love and attention from you.
You have to let it in. You have to water that dry part in your heart so that it will be able to beat again.
And being states means that you're with all of it. A being is a whole thing. A being is with and unto itself. It pays attention to itself, not in a narcissistic way, but in the sense that it knows that it is a whole. Egos are splinters. They're tiny, sharp things that worry about everything, the past and the future. They tear themselves to shreds. They talk to themselves. Beings don't do that. Beings have a wholeness to them. So when you're in your ego state and you're in the future and the past and tearing yourself into little voices that talk to yourselves, you are ignoring the larger part of you. And therefore, then you're saying, well, all this attention, as you said, it's a beautiful analogy, because all this attention is to blunt the fact that you are ignoring the greater part of you. You feel the ego is trying to fill up the part that it's ignoring with all this other volume from outside, all this other noise from outside.
Well, it's fascinating, because what you're actually doing is throwing a reflection out to the world.
Yeah.
That you need attention, but it's like, well, you need to see what part of you is actually lacking. It needs the light of consciousness there to be able to almost unbollocks the knot that you've made. Something is being squeezed or strangled.
Blocked, yeah.
And to unbollocks that so that it can flow once again.
I mean, language informs here too, Margaret, because we always say that fame, people who are seeking fame are needy people. Isn't that an odd thing to say, that you're seeking all this fame because you're needy? Well, we identify it correctly. When you see somebody who has a lot of activities that are designed to draw attention to themselves, whatever they are, and there are many ways, negative and positive. People even say, whatever the attention is, negative or positive, it's just attention.
Yeah.
So the idea is, you say the person is needy. They need attention, and the neediness turns into toxicity. It can turn into negative behaviors to get attention. It can turn into, a wasting of your life's energy to get attention. It can turn into, megalomania and all kinds of other terrible things, because the need becomes a roaring monster of need that no matter what you throw into it, it's insatiable. And the being, which you're ignoring, which is still there and still quiet, and no matter what, the existence of your being is irrefutable. If you would turn all that off and recognize the being that actually needs to be recognized and attended to, suddenly it's quiet, it's peaceful, it's fulfilled, and you can do that. You can do that with action. You can do that with following your purpose, your bliss, and you can do it with introspection, I believe, as well and do it by just realizing existence, realizing now. And I think of those two, the path of joy can lead you to the stillness of now, but the stillness of now doesn't need the path of joy. The one is sort of more complete than the other, if you will.
The Western mind likes taking the blissful path because it feels like it's getting much more satisfaction out of it. But the truth of who you are is past all that. And the blissfulness, I believe, that Campbell was referring to has a lot to do with the fact that mental jabbering, the monkey mind, which Campbell had always complained about. The monkey mind was really stilled in that moment. And that is the core of it, is to still all of that so that you exist in being. And everyone's got to come to it their own particular way. For Campbell, it was following something that he loved to do. But you can also enter these states other ways. It's not just this. But as I said, the Western mind finds that appealing because it wants to be able to do something that it enjoys.
Right. And I think you're absolutely right in the sense that in the West, we see, or rather we're trained, so societally trained, to value action over stillness. And we think, well, if you're pursuing your bliss, you're doing something. You're doing something that brings you joy. And doing is not being.
Right. But
doing in joy is pretty close. It's not there yet. Doing in joy, if you really enjoy, the moment does become now. At the pinnacle of joy, it feels timeless. We've all experienced these pinnacle of joy moments. They seem timeless. They are etched in our memories, and we can go back there almost any time we want, because true joy is a being state, and the closer you get to that, the closer the stillness comes. As you say, it stills the monkey mind. But still, if you say to somebody, "I'm just being," if you're that lovely monk that we saw the special about it, he's on his mountain in the Himalayas or wherever it was, Nepal, and he's just there. He says, "Yeah, just being me," and we would all go, "You're wasting your time," but it didn't. He wouldn't care. But the Western, you're not doing something to bring you joy, is already a contradiction in terms, because doing to bring is not being. But yet, you're right. You're totally right. That feels better.
Well, it's the ego and the
yes.
The mental part doesn't want to give up control, so it's like, well, I'll do this because I'm enjoying it.
Right.
It's just like, but I'm doing this.
I.
Yeah, so it becomes a blockage.
Yes.
For letting go of that state, and even when you're doing what you enjoy, if it's just the ego, then there is that emptiness that returns. And then you say, well, I'm doing everything right. How can it be?
And I think if you're too much concentrating on the doing, you get spun out of the joy. It becomes planning for the next joy.
Well, you centered your existence not in being, but doing, and so you're planning again. Okay, now we've hit another point. I'm going to make a plan so that we can get to the next center of happiness.
So that's a unstable. It's joy, but it can be knocked off easily. If you go beyond that, if you get into the now and closer to the actual stillness, I believe it becomes so incredibly rock solid. Like Tolle is rock solid, stable in his beingness. You see him when he gives these lectures, and he's there in front of people, and he's just being in front of them all, and he's like, they ask a question, and he thinks to himself, question. And he just sits there for about 5 minutes. Everyone gets a little nervous to think, is he dead? And he goes, he takes another breath. After about 5 minutes, he goes, and then he just talks. And he stops talking. And they think, falling asleep. And they ask another question. He truly is he tries to stay as much as he can, as stable as he can in the being state, even in these, large lecture halls. I think Campbell, when you saw him talk, it was very much the planning, monkey mind, do.
Well, professor, so he had to teach.
Right. He had to lecture and plan his lessons and go around.
You have to be in the realm of the mind in order to do that.
Bopping back and forth between joy and planning for joy. And yet, I wouldn't call him an unhappy person, nor a person who was getting into this toxic idea of fame. He wasn't seeking it. He wasn't doing it. He appeared to do it for the fame. He did it for the joy, but yet he was doing to get to the joy. And Tolle is just there joying.
He is, yeah.
You know?
But I'd like to bring up one thing. When you go through things, the things that happen to you throughout your life, there are moments when you hit this part where you realize you are the only one that can do this moment. It's like when people are trying to save someone who's about to fall off a bridge, or saving a life. They're rescuing someone from waters, and they're on top of a car, or you just can't let it be. You see something happening, and you have to do something. And in that moment, when we've said this, it's complete strangers reaching out and doing or acting, there's a part internally that the feeling is, it is for this moment I was born.
Exactly.
And that feeling is indescribable, because it's then that you feel like the hand of God has placed you right here.
Exactly.
For this moment. And it doesn't matter if you were happy or sad or chasing after your bliss or, like miserable in the moment. Suddenly, click. You're there. And you know exactly what's being asked of you, and you give it freely. You give it instantaneously, because inside of you, your internal being, your heart, everything that's you says, this moment, I was born. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That feeling, that it's even past feeling, that being state is referred to in the Bible as a set time, set, S-E-T, time. God has set you there, this time, for this purpose.
And in this time, for this purpose, thank you for listening to The Soul of Your Airman. I'm Michael Lyons.
Oh, and I'm Margaret. And expect your set time.